You almost don't need a sermon this morning. Oh, it's so funny. I didn't even text Pastor Adam after the Habs lost. That's how much I love him. Just I knew he was grieving and spent many hours praying for him that night, just hoping that he wasn't on some bad spot. By the way, if you did sign a guest card, we look forward to having you back next Sunday. Not next Friday. Pastor Adam was in youth pastor mode and invite you. And in fact, if you are younger and you'd like to be part of the youth ministry, you're welcome to come back next Friday. And if you just want to check that out and check out more than his announcements, his great preaching, you can check him out on Friday. But outside of that, we want to see you back next Sunday. Appreciate that. Hey, just two last things, just as a means of prayer. Mitch, we just want to. Where's Mitch? Right there, sorry. Mitch, we just want to be praying. We just want you to know we're praying for you. Mitch lost his grandfather just this weekend, right? And we just want you to know that we're praying for you. And congregation, if you don't know Mitch, he's been one of the young men who's grown up in the church, and he's often in the worship team. We just want to be praying for him. We also want to be praying for Tim Tyson, who went in for emergency surgery on his gallbladder this morning. Tim's been having some problems with his gallbladder for the last little while and was in the hospital a few weeks ago all day Sunday, and they were scheduling an appointment, but I guess something kicked in, and so he's in the hospital right now having some surgery, so we want to be remembering him in our prayers, so appreciate that. Well, friends, we're continuing on with our On Guard series, and today's message is called Guarding Your Path. In my second year of dating Ainsley, I was in Bible college, and one of my uncles had this truck with a standard stick shift. And it wasn't one of the easy ones that you have now where you can quickly maneuver it. It was one of those big giant ones. You know, like the stick shift is about this long. You guys know that truck where you're turning it and trying to get it into gear. And that was the stick shift. And what was so problematic about me, he had lent it to me. What was so problematic about it is I had only driven stick shift once, one other time in my life, and it was on the highway. And if you've ever driven stick, you know that you don't need to shift gears while you're on the highway. And so he had given me this truck, and we had it for a few weeks while he was away on holidays. So here Ainsley and I are dating. I'm in my second year, and it's Thanksgiving weekend, and it was the Thanksgiving Monday, and we decided that we would go up to a conservation area, just the two of us, walk through the woods and see all the beautiful leaves that change colors, and just have this nice romantic walk. And so we did that for about an hour, and we were heading back so that we could get back in time for the Thanksgiving dinner. And as we were coming along Taunton Road, I was looking for a quick route to get back to my place. And friends, I grew up in Oshawa. I know it very, very well. I can get anywhere in the city. It's just not problematic. But as I was coming westbound on Taunton Road, I saw on the right-hand side a road that said Grandview North. Now, Ainsley's parents live on Grandview South, and I thought to myself, surely if this is Grandview North on the north side of the road, that the road that's opposite it will lead to Grandview South. And so I decided to go down this road that didn't look very, very nice. So we turn down this road and start going down this path, and the more we go down this path, the more I realize that this is a pretty rough road. That it's not well maintained, and I hadn't paid attention to any signs coming in. I simply turned down the path, assuming we were on the first part of Grandview South. We kept going, and the road got softer and softer and softer. And then finally I hit this spot where it was incredibly soft, and I found the truck getting stuck. And so here I am down this road that I have no idea where it is, except that it's across from Grandview South. We didn't have cell phones back in those days, and I'm in this truck that I can barely drive. And so here we are, and we're trying to get it going, and it's problematic enough if you are driving a automatic transmission to rock the car back and forth, but I'm now trying to get the thing into gear, go back and forth in this spot. And the more I do it, the more the tires are going into the ground, and I'm seeing water gather, and it's just going deeper and deeper into the mud. I didn't know what to do. I realized at that moment that I should never have taken this road. This was the worst choice, and so I'm quite concerned, and we're trying to think of everything we can do, and I'm trying to stick sticks underneath the tires. I mean, I'm just trying everything to fix the situation. And so finally I said to Ainsley, I said, just lock yourself in the car and don't do anything. You know, I've seen too many of those CSI shows, you know, where you leave your girlfriend on the side of the road and then you don't have a girlfriend anymore. So lock yourself in the vehicle. And make sure you don't talk to strangers, Ainsley, and just stay in there, and I'm going to go looking for help. And so I began to go off across this cornfield up in the northern part of Oshawa. Saw this tractor, this farmer driving his tractor, and so I went up to him all across this cornfield, and I began to knock on his window, and I said to him, hey, could you help me? We're kind of stuck. And he said, where are you? I said, I'm just on this road over here. And he says, you're on that road? I said, yeah. He said, that's a farmer's road. It is? So I thought it was Grandview. He says, no, that's not Grandview. He says, didn't you see the sign as you came in that said, warning, do not, this is a farmer's field. I can't remember what the exact wording was, but the warning sign said, no, I didn't see it. And so he had disgust on his face, and he says, I hate it when people come down that road because they're constantly getting stuck. And so he makes his way over with the tractor, and he says to me, he says, how much money do you have? I'm a Bible college student, sir, so I've got some Canadian Tire cash, and I got about $10, and he says, I'll take that. And so he stuck a chain on the back of his trailer, and he says, okay, go to the back and hook it on. And the end of the chain was this hook, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I was going to hook it onto the trailer hitch or the bumper, and so I'm struggling to get it going. And so finally he's so angry with me, he comes out and he says, what are you doing? And he walks over and he looks over at where I've put it. He says, are you out of your mind? I'm really feeling encouraged here. And so he says, if I put that on there, I'm going to pull off the backside of your truck. And I'm thinking, my uncle's never going to lend me this vehicle again. And so he talks about, he says, just leave it with me. And he takes the chain and he puts it underneath the bottom of the truck and hooks it onto something. And he eventually pulls us out and takes my $10. And Ainsley and I go home to explain to our family why we're late for dinner. All because I turned down the wrong path. All because I went down a road. All I had to do was pay attention to the path that I was on, but I was so flippant about my journey, I was so flippant about where I was going, that I didn't pay attention to any of the signs that gave me warning about entering this road. I didn't pay any attention to where I was. I didn't pay any attention to the terrain that I was on, and I found myself in a spot that I was never intended to be, getting stuck. Friends, each of us are on a journey where each of us are on this path towards heaven, on this path towards God. We're on this planet and we're doing everything we can to be in relationship with Him and to get other people into relationship with God. But the end of the road is that we are going to be with Jesus Christ forever. And we're on this road and we want to be on that path. We want to get to the end of it. But every so often, there are things that come in our way. There are little detours. There are different things that come on our journey that can get us off the right path. They can get us into other paths. And as I watch Christians, as I've watched them for over 40 years now, I have noticed that there are people who are on the right path for a certain amount of time, and something happens that they get off path, or something happens on the path that they're not guarding their path. And what ends up happening is they get stuck in their spirituality, or they find themselves in places that God never intended them to be. It's so important that we guard our path. There are really three paths that you will choose for your life. And I'm not just talking about the big path that leads you to heaven. I'm talking about the daily paths that get you to the big path. There is the bad path. You understand those paths. There are certain things that we will do that will be a bad path. They will be things that will be completely out of the will of God. I'm not going to go through a list of sins, but you can read through the New Testament and find things that will get you on a bad path, and you know that you'll be so far from the things that God's got for your life. You'll be so stuck that no farmer can get you out of it. And there's a good path. And friends, there are paths that you'll go on that won't get you stuck, that may not be as problematic as I described at the beginning of this message, but they are not the best path for your life. They're good paths. They're not hugely problematic, but they're just good. But the best path is God's path. The best path for your life is the things that God has for you. I have sat down with person after person after person as they're about to make a decision, they're about to go down a certain path, and I've said to them, I said, the thing that you've got to determine is not whether or not this is a good plan for your life, is whether or not this is God's plan for your life. Whether this is God's path for where you're going. And friends, when it comes to this congregation, my desire is that each of us would be on the right path, the path that God has for us, not getting stuck, not being trapped, not getting ourselves into a difficult situation, but finding ourselves on the best path. And so as we go through this journey, it's so vitally important that we guard our path. The psalmist in Psalms chapter 1 talks about this journey and this path. And if you just want to open your Bibles, I want to look at Psalm chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. And I want to give you probably a different perspective than you may have heard in the past preached on this. I want to talk about this passage in light of the path that we are on. Psalm chapter 1, verses 1 to 3 says this: "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers." Whatever he does prospers. The psalmist starts off talking about three different paths that we can be on. And then at the end of verse 3, he says there's actually a path that will lead us in a place that whatever we do, we'll have God's prosperity on our lives. Friends, I don't know about you, but I want to live my life in a way that every time I do something, I've got the divine Midas touch. I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, God's hands upon it. I don't want to be struggling when I don't need to be struggling. I don't want to be effortlessly rocking my life back and forth trying to get out of a path I'm not supposed to be on. I want to be doing whatever it takes to have the prosperity, and I don't just mean financially, but God's blessing upon my life. I want to live in that type of way, and I'm sure that each of you wants to live in that type of way. And so he talks about these three paths. He talks about those who would walk in the path of the counsel of the ungodly. And then he talks about those who would stand in the way of sinners. And then he talks about those who would sit in the seat of mockers. And friends, I want to suggest that the three paths that you need to pay attention are the reverse of all three of those things. The first thing that we need to do if we're going to guard our path is we need to walk with the wise. You need to walk with wise people, friends. The Bible says, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly." There's some key things to consider there, is that the people that you're walking with are ungodly, and they're giving you advice. These are people who don't fear God. These are people who don't care what's the best in God's mind. They care about what's best for you in their perceptions. They're not looking at your situation out of a fear for God. They're simply giving you all kinds of advice from their life's perspective, from their own experiences. They're trying to give you advice as to where you go that is not founded in the things and the principles of God. And he says, if you choose those paths, you will always find yourself in a place that doesn't give you God's prosperity. You know those individuals that I'm talking about? They're the people who just will champion your cause on, and they barely ever confront you on things. They tell you the things that you want to hear. You know those people? Should I spend $50,000 and buy this car that I've always wanted? Oh yeah, do it. You only live once. YOLO. Sorry, I haven't said that for a year. You only live once. You only live once. Sure, buy it. $50,000, big deal. Hey, should I divorce my wife? She doesn't make me happy the way she once did. Oh yeah, go ahead. Your happiness is what matters. Hey, you know what? My boss is treating me harsh. Should I go tell him off? Oh yeah, I would. I'd go right in there and I'd tell him the way it is. I'd tell him the way things are. I'd let him know who's in charge, and he'll let you know who's in charge. The counsel of the ungodly. People who don't have the fear of God at the core of who they are. People who don't focus on what matters to God. People who are operating with a lack of wisdom. He says some of us choose paths and we get our advice from people who are ungodly, and we're walking along with them, and we're about to make some major decisions in our life, or we're about to make some path choices, and we seek out the counsel of people who don't have the heart of God. Friends, if you're gonna stay on the right path, if you're gonna do the right things, if you're gonna make the right decisions for your life, you've got to have wise people in your life. You got to have people who have the fear of God at the core of who they are. Who every time they look at a situation, they're not just there to make you smile, they're there to give you the answers that God would give you. Wise individuals. I had a buddy when I was growing up, and at one point along the journey, he began to feel that God was calling him into ministry. We had hung out for a number of years, and we had a lot of fun times, but he wasn't super serious about the things of God. I mean, he would worship it, and he would show up at youth ministry, but you didn't see much passion for any of the extra things. You didn't see much passion for areas of involvement or for reaching people, and he just seemed to be a little bit lukewarm, but this crisis moment in his life spiritually brought him to a place where he felt that God was calling him into ministry. And I remember as he began to hang out with some of my friends, we would encourage him to make tough decisions, to be willing to do whatever God had for his life, to not worry about all the provisions that need to be there, but to just trust God. And we kept trying to give him godly advice, things that seemed to make sense. And for a season, things were going so well for him. But then after a little while, he began to get tired of the conversations that he was having with some of my friends. And he began to hang out with some of the other teenagers in our youth group. And they weren't bad teenagers, but if I could look back at these teenagers, they were more focused on pleasures than purpose. And these friends would say, hey, you know what? You just need to live for the now. Hey, you know what? You don't need to be so serious about church. Hey, you know what? You got your whole life to get the things with God right. Just have fun. And the more he hung out with them, the more that he would hear advice from them that wasn't from the center of God's heart. And he'd get his advice from them. And the more he got that advice, the further away from this call of God on his life he got. The further off path he got. The further down this detoured road he got, to the place where he decided that he was no longer going to go into ministry. And to be quite honest, friends, I'm not even sure he's serving God today. Individuals who are passionate about God, on fire with God, surrounding themselves with wise individuals. And all it takes is they begin to walk with those, go down that path where there are people that you are talking with and getting advice from who have a lack of wisdom, who seek their own pleasures rather than the pleasures of God. There's a story in the Bible that I absolutely love. It's the calling of Elisha. This one day, Elisha is out in his field, and he's got 12 sets of oxen, and he's got the plows and everything, and he's tilling the field, and he's working hard. He's been doing this day after day, and it seems like this is the family business. I mean, he's got so many oxen and plows. It seems that he has a significant piece of land. Most likely, Elisha is incredibly rich, and he's going into the way of prosperity. He's going in a direction with his life down a path that seems to make sense. This is what you want for your kids, to make lots of money, to have lots of stuff, to own lots of land, to set up things for when we retire. That's what we want, right? His parents must have been encouraging him. And as he's out there with the plow, this little prophet Elijah comes along. And he comes up to him, and just a strange man just walking into the field, and he takes his cloak and he puts it upon Elisha, and then he begins to walk away. And Elisha stops him and he says, hey, hold on for a second. Just let me go home and say bye to my parents. And then Elijah says these strange words. He says, well, do whatever you want. What do I have to do with that? What do I have to do with that? I began to meditate on this passage, did a little study this week about this. Elisha has a call on his life, and Elijah is simply being obedient to God by taking the mantle and placing it on Elisha's life. He simply wants Elisha to know that God has picked him for a path that's incredible, to be one of the prophets. He simply wants to do what God has told him to do by placing the mantle and saying, hey, Elisha, God just wants you to know that the path he's chosen is one of full-time ministry to be a prophet. Places it on them, and he begins to walk away. And when Elisha says, hey, just let me say goodbye, Elijah's thinking, what does that have to do with me? I'm just here to do one task. God only asked me to do one thing. Whatever you do with this call is your decision. But Elisha knows the significance of what God has called him to. He knows the significance of this path. And not only does he say bye to his parents, but he says bye to the whole family business. I mean, it must have been a heartbreak for his parents to see the big barbecue that Elisha put together. I mean, he burns all the plows. There's so many animal sounds and like screeching, and they look out their window, and there's this massive barbecue. I mean, giant cowboy steaks, the huge ones. I mean, it's just, he is putting this big barbecue together. That's the family business. He's tossing it away. Why? Because not only is he called towards doing this, but he knows that if he's going to walk this path properly, he needs to fix his wagon to this little prophet. He needs to get beside this man, Elijah. God never told Elijah to mentor Elisha, but Elisha knows that if he's going to fulfill the mandate for his life, if he's going to walk in this path, he's got to get beside the wise prophet. He's got to get rid of everything that will prevent him from following this path. He either hooks up to the man who's wise, or if he stays with this call in his life, he knows his parents are going to influence him to keep on with the family business. And he chooses to walk with the wise. He chooses to walk with the wise, to learn from somebody who knows God, to learn from somebody who has a connection with God, not just a religious person, but somebody who knows God. Friends, I want to encourage you with this. If you're going to walk the path that God has for your life, surround yourself with godly people who speak into your life. Surround yourselves with people who will stretch you in the things of God. People who will not give you easy answers, but people who will give you God answers. People who will help you become what God has for you. If you want to walk the path properly, guard the path to make sure that you're walking with wise people. People who have at the center of their hearts a fear of God. You see, the ungodly counsel will say stuff like this: if you're not happy, get divorced. They'll say happiness matters most. They'll say everyone is doing this, so why shouldn't you be doing this? They'll say it's not that bad. Go ahead and do it. They'll say, hey, you have a right to be angry. You have a right to say those words. You have a right to commit these actions. They'll say, hey, you were born that way, so it makes sense that you would live like that. They'll give you all the answers that will tickle your ears and make you feel good about yourself, but they won't lead you on the path that God's got for you. If you're going to walk on the path that God's got for you, if you're going to guard your path, you've got to walk with the wise. Number two, not only should you walk with the wise, but you got to choose your stops very carefully. Choose your stops very carefully. This is what the psalmist says. He says, be careful that you don't stand in the way of the sinner. Be careful that you don't stand in the way of sinners. Now, friends, some of us look at that passage and said, see, I told you, we can't hang out with unsaved people. You see, this passage proves that pastor's been talking about building relationships with unsaved people, but the Bible says we shouldn't be standing around those people, those pagans, ungodly talk coming from their mouths, ungodly actions. Do you know the things they watch on TV? Do you know the places they go? Do you know what they do on Saturday nights? We can't hang out with those people. The Bible says so. Well, friends, that's not what this passage is about. In fact, if that's truly what this passage means, then Jesus broke this passage clearly, because he was hanging out with prostitutes, tax collectors, and all kinds of bad people. He was hanging out. He became known as the friend of sinners. So what is it that the psalmist is saying? There are really three parts to this passage. There's the standing, there's the way, and then there's the sinners. The word stand is this idea of not just standing for a moment, but it's actually fixating one's feet. It's actually establishing oneself in a spot. It's saying, hey, this is my spot. This is where I choose to stand. It's the idea of when you're having a debate with somebody. You may, for a season in your mind, go, I'm not sure if I believe this or I believe this, but at some point, you begin to establish what you truly believe. Oh, you know what? I believe this. I believe the Leafs will win the cup someday. I believe it. I've established my feet there. Maybe soft ground, but that's what I've established for myself. It's the establishment of your feet in a spot, so he says stand. And he talks about the way, and the way is a path in a certain direction. And then he says that on that direction are these sinful individuals. And what the psalmist is talking about is this, is that there will come times in the path where we will need to take a break, where we will need to stop for just a second, where we'll just need to rest for a second. And we will come to a place where there is a part in the path where sinners are. There's a part in the path, a little veer, where there are sinners. And this is what happens. This is the way the enemy works for your life. He wants to get you so off track. He knows that along the path that you're on, there are going to be moments when you are incredibly tired. And he knows that you're going to need to stop. So what he does, he watches your path. You think about this in practical terms. We'll talk about it in just a sec. He just watches your path. He watches to see how weary you're becoming. How much you've given out, how mentally fatigued you've got, how much of your emotions you've spent. And he stands back and he goes, you know what? There's coming a point when Jeff's going to just need to stop for a second. He's going to need to just find a pit stop where he can just rest. And when he does, I'm going to plant a road right there, the road of the sinner, the path of the sinner. And when he stops, I'm going to try to entice him. I'm going to try to bring him onto this path. And he stands at the pit stop where you come to a place of being tired, and he begins to present you with temptation. Now, friends, listen. Temptation is not sin. We are all tempted. If you're not tempted, then you're probably not human. The only people who aren't tempted are robots. We all have a sinful nature, and the enemy is constantly driving us towards sin. Even Jesus was tempted, having no sinful nature. He was even tempted. And the enemy comes along, and he stands there, and we're walking along, and we're running so well, and then we start to go, I'm a little tired. And we get to this place, and it's the path of the sinner, the way of the sinner. And the enemy stands there knowing that we're about to get tired, and he says, hey, you know what? Why don't you check out this path? And we walk up to the edge of the path, and we stand there just for a moment. And we look, and we begin to see that this path is full of sin. This path is full of self-gratification. This path lets us say whatever we want to say. This path lets us do whatever we want to do. This is the path of the sinners. This path was designed for sinners. And we stand at the front of that path. It's okay to stand there for a moment. But what the psalmist is saying, be careful that you don't establish yourself on that path. You get lured in. You get tired and you get lured there, and the enemy tries to tempt you to come on the path of the sinner, the way of the sinner, to get off course. He tempts you onto this path where sinners live, and you're standing there just for a moment, but what he wants is you to walk down that path and then establish yourself and say, I choose this as my path. I choose this as my path for my life. This is the path I want. I'm so tired, I just want to gratify myself right now. I'm so tired, I just want to give in with the things that I like to say. I'm so tired, I just want to watch whatever I want to watch. I'm so tired, I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of going down this path. And he tries to draw you onto that path of sinners to establish your feet there. You think about Exodus chapter 39, Joseph. Joseph, as a young boy, is given this great dream that God's going to use him in a powerful way. And he's got great aspirations that aren't even human aspirations. They're the aspirations of God himself. And one day his brothers are so angry with him. They're so upset with the things that he's declaring. And they probably know that Joseph is truly hearing from God, that they try to kill him. And one of the brothers stands up and says, no, we can't kill him, but let's just throw him down a pit till we can figure out what to do. They do, and they take his robe and the garment that Jacob had given him. They take that garment and they put it aside, and now Joseph's in this pit, and some people come along and they sell their brother off to slavery. The promised one, the individual who's been going on the path, who's been so faithful to God, who's had intimacy with God, he gets sold into slavery. And everything seems so bad. He has to leave his father who loves him incredibly. He has to leave the land that he's been part of. He has to leave what was so good to go to something that's so foreign and so bad. And he's the slave, and he sees the path that he's on as being a bad path. But after faithfulness, staying on the course, staying on the path, he comes to a place where Potiphar, one of the guardsmen for Pharaoh, makes him head over his household. And things begin to look up. But one day, Joseph comes in to Potiphar's house, and the Bible tells us that Potiphar's wife is a looker. She is beautiful. I'm not going to start to describe her, but she's beautiful. You can, whatever that looks like for you, she is just a knockout. And Joseph, he's not dead. He recognizes that this lady is beautiful, and he's in the house, and she kind of grabs Joseph and says, hey, sweetheart. Grabs his arm, hey, sweetheart. And you've seen this in those movies, what girls do. They drop their hair and they swing it up so that the scent of it catches the nose of the man. Just, hi, sweetheart. And her eyelashes begin to flutter. She wants this Joseph. He's a strong man, and does the hair thing and fluttering eyes. And she's got all kinds of perfume on. Like, she smells so good. She smells like the cosmetic counter. It's incredible. And she's got Joseph's arm. She's like, hey, sweetheart. She looks him in the eye. And friends, I'm convinced because she's so beautiful, Joseph looks at her and recognizes the beauty, and his heart's got a race because he's a man. He recognizes this girl's good looking. And she says, I'd like to sleep with you. Oh, he hasn't been desired by anybody for years. He hasn't been desired by anybody for so many years. The last time anybody's expressed love was when he was just a young boy and his dad gave him this colorful coat that looked incredible when we used to do flannel graph. Sorry. I mean, the last time he remembers that anybody wanted to show him love was that moment, and here's this incredibly beautiful girl that wants his attention. And I wonder if in that moment he thought, man, I've been fighting this path. I've been walking in faithfulness to God. I've got this dream. I've been doing so well. I'm getting tired. I really would like to be with this lady, but no. And he immediately says, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And he runs out of the house. That's okay once. But friends, day after day, enemy's standing there at the path of the way of sinners. And he's trying to lure Joseph in. He's trying to lure him in. And Joseph's following God, and he's walking so well, and there are moments where he gets weary, and the more times he comes into Potiphar's house, the more times Potiphar's wife is trying to drag him in. She's trying to drag him in, and I'm convinced that after time after time after time of true temptation, we get weary. The reason why I know that is because I know that's the truth with me. But friends, if we're honest, if you face the same real temptation over and over and over again, you begin to get frustrated inside, going, man, maybe I should just give in. Maybe I should just give in. It gets tiresome. It gets tiresome fighting. I mean, the Bible talks about it being this fight. It talks about giving everything we've got. It becomes tiresome when we're fighting temptations, not to say certain things, not to do certain things, not to think certain things. We've been working so hard, and Joseph is there, and he's every time he comes into Potiphar's house, he's got to fight the temptation. This last time he comes in, and he needs rest, man. He's been given so much for God, but he comes in, and Potiphar's wife, I mean, she has bought the most expensive perfume. She's got the nicest outfit on. And it happens to be a day when nobody's around. I mean, it's the perfect case. It's a situation where David can give in, where David can do something, and nobody will know. Nobody will have any idea. This is the moment where he can stop. This is the moment where he can rest. This is the moment where he can stop fighting from the things that he actually desires to do, and nobody will know. And she calls him into the house, and he looks around, and it's just quietness, except for little Frank Sinatra playing in the background. No. No, there was no Frank Sinatra. Kenny G. Anyways. And she's dressed up, and she's like Joseph. And she does the whole hair thing, and the eyelashes fluttering at him, and she's trying to lure him in. And it would be so easy at this moment when he's so tired to stop and to choose the path of the way of sinners. This would be the perfect place for him to stop, to establish his feet, saying, I'm tired of going for God. I'm tired of fighting so hard. I just want to give in to my flesh. But Joseph says, no. I can't choose to stop here. I can't choose this as the place where my flesh is appealed. I need God to reprieve me. I need God to pour into me. But this is not the spot. This is not the spot for me to stop. And he goes flying out of Potiphar's house, even though he could easily have a relationship with her in this moment, and nobody will know. You see, friends, that's what God's calling us to do. He's calling us to live our lives so that we so guard our past that when the enemy's looking for the moments when we're tired and he's throwing temptation at us so that he can lure us onto that path of sin, that we choose not to stop there but to keep going and find the place of refuge that's in him. You see, I promise you this, none of you in this place can keep going full tilt for God without stopping for a moment, allowing him to refresh you. None of you can give it 110% in your faith without having moments where you just need to pull back and breathe. That's why God created the Sabbath. He's looking for moments. He knows that you need moments of rest, but so does the enemy. He knows that you're going to get tired, and he's trying to set up shop right next to the pit stop that God's got for your life. And some of us give in to our flesh. We give into the things that we think will deal with this tiredness. We give into the things that will appeal to us. And if we just move past that pit stop that the enemy set up, that temptation, the way of the sinner, and we just keep going, we will find the place of rest. We will find the place of refreshment. But if we choose this path, we'll find ourselves establishing ourselves, not for a moment, for our life, in the way of the sinner. We've got to choose our stops carefully. Choose your stops carefully. See, the enemy knows that you will hit moments where you're tired of the boredom in your life. He knows that you'll hit moments when you're tired of not being accepted by other people. He knows that you'll hit moments where you're tired of not experiencing the things that other people are experiencing. He knows you'll hit moments when you're tired of giving it your all and not seeing the fruit, the things that you anticipated. And he's trying to set up pit stops on your path to draw you into the way of sinners, saying, stop here. Breathe. You know, you're along this journey, you're giving it your all for God, you're on the path, you're pursuing Him, you get tired, you know that you need a moment just to rest. And it's one thing for you just to take a quick moment, just to sit for a second. I just need to rest my legs. Okay, that's good, now I can keep going. But what the psalmist is talking about is that you actually have got to a place where you're seated and you found a place of comfort. Where you're actually on the path towards God, but you've just stopped moving. You've just got comfortable. You said, you know what, I need more than a rest. I actually like it here. I like this. I just needed a rest. I just needed a break. I just need to pull back from some ministries, and I just need to rejuvenate myself, and you know, I really like it here. Oh, those new lights feel good on my face. This is good. And we just begin to relax. The enemy wants you to be there on your path. He doesn't care if you're on the path, because if you're not actually moving forward, then he's got you right where he wants you. You get to that place where you're in the place of comfort, where you're in the place where you're so comfortable that you're not provoked by a whole lot around you. You're sitting. Blessed is the man who does not sit. And then what does it say? The seat is the seat of mockers. It's the seat of mockers. Oh, what does it mean to mock? It means to become critical or cynical of something or someone. To get critical or cynical of something or someone. I began to think about this week. When do we become critical? When do we become cynical? It happens when we start to face moments of discomfort. It happens when we begin to get frustrated by our situation. You know, where we keep pushing in a certain direction, going for God, but man, we're getting frustrated. It's just not going the way we thought it was going to go. The moments where we become confused. We prayed for the healing, but it didn't happen. We worked hard for the goal, but it never happened. We did all the things that we thought we were supposed to do, so why isn't God showing up? And we get so confused. It's the moments where we're hurt, where we've been so faithful, and we've faced hurt after hurt. Friends, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because if you've been part of the church world, you've experienced any of these emotions. There are moments where you're serving Jesus faithfully, and you face a moment of discomfort. God, what was that about? I've been serving you so faithfully. These moments where you get so frustrated. God, I don't get it. I'm so frustrated with the church right now. I'm so frustrated with some of the people who call themselves Christians. I'm so frustrated with what they represent. We get confused. We say, if that's Christianity, then why would anybody want to be part of it? If this God that we talk about is so faithful and so able to do the impossible, then why doesn't he? When is this Jesus coming back? And we begin to get confused. And then some of us get really hurt. We get to this place where people have offended us and offended us and offended us. And we get really, really hurt by that. And we walk in and we do what we're supposed to do. We smile. We put on the facade. Oh, yeah, how's it going, brother? Oh, praise God, everything's great. You big. You know, I'm being honest here. You've been there. You put on the facade. You look like Mr. Christian. You're dressed in your holy dress. You know, you got your holy appearance on. You look so good, but inside that person has talked behind your back. They've said things to you. They've let you down. They've hurt you incredibly. And you inside are ready to take people out. You're hurt. And you're on this path, and as you're on this path, you're just dealing with all these emotions, and you see the seat. So tired of dealing with all this stuff, this discomfort and the confusion and the hurts, the frustrations. You begin to take a seat, and you get comfortable. And you start to look around. Look at that person. Look at the way they worship. They don't worship the way they should worship. They put the right hand up. Don't they know it needs to be the left hand? Look at that person. Oh yeah, they look really spiritual today. But I've seen them in the grocery store, the way they treat the cashier. Oh yeah, that person is a leader in this church. My goodness. Oh, look at what she's wearing today. Where in the world does she shop? Hello, the 1940s called. They want their clothes back. And we begin to look around, and we begin to criticize, and we begin to get cynical of people in the place. We begin to get cynical and critical of God, the things of God, and the people of God. That's the seat of mockers. And churches that are in unhealthy places are looking around. There's a lot of people on the path, but they're sitting in the seat of mockers. Rather than showing what it means to be the real deal, they're they're a better preacher than me. They are simply sitting back and criticizing everything that gets done, criticizing everything that's happening, criticizing the people of God, criticizing leadership, criticizing the board, criticizing the people that are sitting beside them in their pew, criticizing their spouses, criticizing their kids, criticizing their mother-in-law. They're just criticizing everybody. The seat of mockers. And the enemy, friends, is so happy when we sit here, because we're on the path and we believe certain things, but we're not moving. We're not going forward. We think that we're on the right path, but we're not guarding the path. We found the seat of criticism. We found the seat of cynicism. And we are criticizing and tearing people apart and tearing the things of God apart. We know how to do things better than the next person. We know what spirituality should look like. We know what Christianity looks like. We are like those big, giant men sitting in their living rooms with a big bowl of popcorn watching a football game, telling them what they should do. We become so critical, but we're not actually doing anything because we're not in the game. We're just sitting back. We're just talking about everybody. Friends, I want to tell you that you need to guard yourself from being in this seat. You need to guard yourself from getting to a spot where all the things of life hit you, all the things, the realities of life hit you, and you begin to get confused by the things of God. You begin to face discomfort, and you don't know how to express the anguish in your heart. You get hurt by people. You get frustrated, and the enemy wants you to sit in the chair of the mocker. And he wants you to sit back and stop moving and start to criticize other people. Because he knows that if you can be there, that you will never fulfill the things that God's got for your life. You'll never fulfill it. And the psalmist says, "Blessed is the man who does not sit in the seat of the mocker." And I'm on my path, and I'm going after God, and people begin to hurt me, and things begin to happen that I don't understand, and I'm tempted to sit in the seat that's on my path, thinking surely this is something God's provided. But it's the seat of mockers. And friends, I need to fold up that chair and say, I choose to get rid of the chairs in my life. I choose not to be an individual who will constantly criticize and become cynical of the things of God himself, or the people of God. I choose to remove the chair because God's got a path for my life, and I want to keep moving forward. I don't want the enemy stopping me. I want to make sure I get to the end. I want to make sure I get to the end. Friends, let me just say this just before I close. I promise you this. I promise you. If you are new to CPC, somebody is going to hurt you. Somebody is going to let you down. There are going to be prayers you pray that don't get answered. There are going to be situations in your life that you will not like. There will be moments where you will be frustrated. Welcome to our church. It's the truth. We're humans. I'm going to let you down. I'm going to say things I shouldn't say. I'm going to do things I shouldn't do. I don't mean to do them intentionally. I don't mean to say them intentionally. I never mean to hurt people, neither do the people around you. But the enemy wants to use all that stuff to get you seated in the place where you get so hurt, so broken that you're just criticizing and not moving forward. If we could love one another, if we could have God's agape love in our lives for one another, if we can trust God even when we don't understand, and even some of the things of God that maybe we don't understand, and maybe it'll take a little while before we actually get it into our head. Maybe we'll need some people around us to help us learn. If we'll just be patient with one another and with God and with the things of God and keep walking, we'll be on the right path. We'll be on the right path. I had this kid I coached last summer. I have no idea how this kid got on my team. I won't tell you his name just in case he happens to be listening, which I'm pretty sure he's not. But the Cobras had signed the player, not signed them, but had recruited the players, and so I got a list and became the coach in the aftermath of it. And this kid, he would go on the field, and I just keep telling him, hey, you need to do this. Oh, yeah, coach. Yeah. And then he'd do the opposite thing. And then he'd come off the field, and he'd tell me what other kids should do. It was the most foolish conversations I'd ever have. He would never listen to me. I'm the coach. I've been doing this for years. Listen to me. And I'd tell him to go do something. He would never listen. He'd keep playing, and then there'd be these moments where he'd take these most inconvenient breaks. You know, they're about to take a corner kick in our end. Coach, sub. What do you mean, sub? They'd be on a break. They'd be running up the field with the ball, and he'd come over to the sidelines. Coach, can I come off now? Are you out of your mind? This is not acceptable. I'll never forget one practice. We were playing, and he's in our end zone, and he's playing goalie. And he's there for maybe like 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes of the game, and the ball's barely even been down there. And he's made a couple plays, and he says, Coach, I'm so tired. Can I just take a break? 2 minutes. I looked at him and was like, how are you going to last for 90 if you can't last for 2? These inconvenient breaks. Then we'd be in the middle of these games, and he'd start to criticize the other players. he'd look at them and go, look at him. He should be up on the left-hand side. Oh, like the thing you never do? Look at him. He should have struck the ball right there. You've never even struck a ball. Look, and he'd start criticizing, and I watched him lack my advice. I watched him take inconvenient breaks, and I watched him criticize everybody else. And friends, we got about 5 games into the season, and this player decided that he was not going to play anymore. And I wasn't surprised one bit because I had no idea why he came on the team in the first place. My concern is that people would choose to not listen to the wise people. They would take unbelievably inconvenient breaks. And they would become critical of everybody else, and they would remove themselves from the team that God's put you on. God wants us to win, friends. He wants us to win. Listen, he doesn't just want Adam to win. He doesn't just want Larry to win. He doesn't want just Dave to win. He wants this team to win. He wants us to get to heaven. High five each other, say, we made it. We did well. We followed the path right to the end because we walked with the wise. We watched our pit stops, and we made sure we never sat down in the seat of the mocker. Friends, let's walk it together and make sure that we win. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? I'm going to give one prayer, one invitation, and then I want you just to process this week. I want you to think about this. I mean, there are three separate ideas that God's speaking to some of you about. Some of you need to be thinking about whether or not you've got wise people in your life giving you good advice. Some of you need to be thinking about whether or not you've been stopping in places that have led you onto the path of the sinner. And some of you need to be thinking about whether or not you've come to the place of mocking, criticism, cynicism of others around you, of God and the things of God. You let God work in your hearts. So I'm going to leave this with you in just a few moments. But friends, with your heads bowed, your eyes closed, I want to ask this. You've come into this place and you'd say, hey preacher, I don't really know this God that you're talking about, but I sense him in this place. You talked about his tangible presence, and I don't really understand it, but when I walked in, I felt some love, I felt some warmth, I felt something that I haven't felt ever before in my life. I don't know much about this Jesus or this God, but I want to give my life to him. Or maybe you're in this place, you say, I once walked with him, but I chose some paths that were so bad that I found myself on the path of sinners. And I'm not going in the right direction, but today I want to course alignment. I want to get back on track. If you're in one of those two categories, would you raise your hand? Pastor, I want to get my life right with God today. Just raise your hand. No one's looking around, just you and me. Very quickly, just raise your hand. This is your moment. Is there anybody in this place? One last chance. All right. Your head's bowed, your eyes closed still. Friends, if you know God's prompting you in that way, but you just were a little hesitant to raise your hand, we'll have some altar workers at the front who are willing to talk with you. If you need prayer for any need, we'll have some people here at the front. But my challenge to the congregation as a whole, this week, would you guard your path? Would you make sure that you're not just heading in the right direction, but you're making sure that you're walking with the wise, that you're checking the places where you're stopping for refreshment, that they're God places, and that you have not found yourself in a place where you've got comfortable and you've stopped moving and you've become critical of others rather than showing the path that you need to walk and the way to walk. Would you check your hearts this week? So, Father, I thank you so much for your word. I thank you for the richness of Psalms and for what David wrote. And I pray this week as we leave this place that we'll guard our path, that we'll check our hearts to make sure that we're walking in the right ways. God, let us be a people who walk with complete intention with our lives. I pray this week that we would process this. And on our drive home, we'd ask questions to our spouse or to our kids or the people we're driving with about how we can put this into application, how we can make this applicable to our lives, how we can put this into practice. God, I pray that we will guard our paths this week. Now, God, would you use this congregation this week? Would you bring them into some divine encounters, some things that you've created so that we can make an impact on this world? Bless each one, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.